Travis Johnson asks RJ if you'll be at Wrestle Dream this Sunday.
Yes. That's been another blessing in my life. The wonderful Renee Paquette popped up out of nowhere. I don't know what connection she has to AEW or the AEW roster, but all of a sudden she's there. And I knew her a little bit before. And we thought, well, what are we going to do here? And we got on camera, and it was we had some sort of chemistry in probably the worst way. And now we host every pay-per-view pre-show. So if there's a pay-per-view, Renee and I are at it, and it's this Sunday in Seattle. And there is such an art to it. And I now watch them all the time. The pay-per-view intros with, Gorilla and Jesse and Tony Schiavone and Jesse and WCW. There's an art to it. I mean, they've all been done horribly too, don't get me wrong. But it's a level I strive to. You know what I'm saying? You don't have personalities like that anymore.
Was hosting in your buffet there when you were considering things to do in the business? I read somewhere where kids would ask you, or people would ask you when you were younger, what do you want to do? You said wrestling and entertainment.
Yes. It says it on the back of a baseball card I had when I was a kid. I played on a baseball team. It was wrestling and the Muppet Show for me, which really, let's be honest,
it's the same
John,
thing, really.
Exact same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you've ever seen Kay Ballard throw a working punch, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But
I had a sexual dream with Kay Ballard in it, like when I was like 14, that just basically, and the whole thing was she was trying to take an inseam measurement of me, and it was Kay Ballard, and I mean,
oh, was it? She had the black bob.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I mean, you remember how loud she was?
Yes.
I mean, she was that loud in the dream. There was nothing sexual. It was just this.
Yeah.
It was almost like I was. I don't know.
It wasn't very erotic, I'd imagine.
When she was going for the inseam, it was almost. I wouldn't have woke up. I might have spilled the beans. I don't know.
Right. Joseph James asks you, RJ, what made you such a fan of Lawrence Welk and his show?
Okay. Lawrence Welk, much like Ed Sullivan, is a guy who should have never been on television.
Never.
He's not handsome. He's not charismatic. He speaks like English is his second language, but it's not. He was born in North Dakota. So I don't understand. He ran a really tight ship. It was almost Mormonish, how they always had to marry into each other, the whole family,
Right.
And he just thought, well, we'll play all this music and we'll have a nice time. And that was, there was so few options on television that you had to watch Lawrence Welk.
I remember going to my grandparents, my step grandparents, and it was like you would see those curtains. They'd open up, and before you knew it, out came Sissy and Bobby, and it was just like, oh, mother, for the love of God, like,
Yes.
I mean, it was like that followed the news, so it was like Cronkite, Lauren. I mean, and then you'd finally get Mutual of Omaha and start to pick up a little steam and go into Disney, but yeah, that was a Sunday night. Spectacular there in Detroit for a while.
Yeah. And
yeah,
he's still on PBS. They still got the descendants of the family being like, most of these people are dead. Please donate to your local station.
Yeah, and you can catch some of the old like the Andy Williams Christmas special, those pop up on maybe not Netflix, maybe it's like Amazon or something every once in a while. And if younger folk want to see how it was. You hit the nail on the head though, RJ, when you talked about how little choice we had on television back then. You had five channels, maybe seven. So you were really, if you were going to watch television, you were held hostage to whatever those seven offerings were. And how some of this stuff couldn't have been made probably if there was more of a democratic choice here.
I remember.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just saying that I remember, when I was, because I've always been a kid that can't sleep. like how many times that I would watch the Star Spangled Banner switch into the test pattern. I would watch that transition because that was like I'm taking it as far as I can go. And then finally it would become like ABC would have the late movie. And it'd be like I remember one of them that I'll never forget this one. It was Espionage in Tangiers.
Mm.
And it was like, I mean, just, and I'm like 6 years old, and I'm up at 1 o'clock watching a movie, and it's just starting. I'm just thinking to myself, like, with commercials, I got 2 hours easy. Like, I'm gonna be like, this is, and now, last night I get home, what do I do? Let's watch 4 episodes of Pacific on on
What is it?
and like it's the break off. It's Band of Brothers, but it's now instead of
Oh,
being in Germany, now we're in the Pacific Islands.
there was a spinoff to Band of Brothers. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
It
Spielberg.
was
Still
2011, I
Spielberg
think.
directs it.
Okay.
Summer
Directs it
2010.
and, what's that?
Pretty sure it was the summer 2010. They came out with the Pacific, and I remember enjoying it, and then nobody talking about it.
My son and I watched it, and we really enjoyed it. It's actually like you don't realize how gruesome that like, you know, because that doesn't get any coverage. The Guatemala Canal, like you hear that, but in like the island, like I didn't realize how much fighting happened in the Pacific and the Samoan Islands.
Mm-hmm. Steve, while I have you here, is this true that Joseph James, who asked RJ the question about Lawrence Welk, is related to Lawrence Welk?
That's what Joseph James is saying in the chat, and I didn't want to call him out to see if he wanted to come on audio to
maybe he's one of the aforementioned offspring or descendants that host on PBS. Joseph, let us know. I mean, you want the airtime, you got it here, brother. You don't have to phone the question. You don't have to mail the questions. You can.
I asked him to unmute.
To make.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
You asked me to unmute for like 15 minutes, so I was doing my damnedest.
We're on a tight auditory shift here.